I'm Tyler Suiters, and you're watching Clean Skies News. Al Gore has taken a low profile publicly during discussions about a Senate climate bill, but privately his influence is clearly being felt. Here to discuss the push and the pull of this discussion is Dr. Elaine Kamarck. She is co-chair and co-founder of the U.S. Climate Task Force, and she was senior policy advisor to Al Gore during his 2000 presidential campaign. Dr. Kamarck, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
I want to start by talking about the mission of the Climate Task Force, and it says it's to support climate policy that secures necessary reductions in greenhouse gases, but also in the most cost-effective way possible. According to you, that is a carbon tax.
Right. According to us, it's not just a carbon tax, it's a carbon tax shift. So what we've advocated from the beginning is raising the price of carbon through a tax, and then rebating that tax to the American consumer in one way or another. Our preferred way is a payroll tax, but you could imagine doing that in a straight rebate. You could imagine doing that on the income tax. You could imagine doing it in other ways. But for us to really raise the price of carbon sufficiently to make the transformation to a non-fossil fuel economy, we think you've got to give the money back to the American consumer.
Let's bring everyone up to date to where we are now,
Yeah.
and that is the consultations over climate legislation. And a quote that you had in one of your political articles that you wrote, this is from Roll Call. It came in August of 2009. This seems to nail the situation as it is right now, but it was very prescient because it was almost a year ago. Quoting now, "The more voters hear about cap and trade, the more they are likely to flinch and the more politicians are likely to back off. Consequently, we all need an alternative, a plan B." Plan B is what's coming up time and time again here in Washington in these discussions. You said that we'd be well suited to go back to Al Gore's original idea, again, that idea of taxing carbon and also cutting payroll taxes along the way.
That was, I mean, it's interesting how you come full circle, right? That idea was in the last chapter of Al Gore's famous book, Earth in the Balance. That was how he proposed it, because he understood that climate change is a difficult problem to deal with politically, because unlike, say, water pollution or something that people can actually see and smell and taste, it's kind of not immediate. So to get at it, you really do have to devise a way that moves us from a fossil fuel economy to a non-fossil fuel economy, and you have to give something back to the consumers to make up for the fact that their gasoline prices will increase, and so will their electricity prices. So I think it was the right formulation, even though it was a long ago and we've kind of come back around to it.
Well, when you speak of coming back around, or the idea of a full circle, Elaine, when we talk about the former vice president, there are strong reactions from both sides of the climate change debate. And most recently has been the ClimateGate issues and a new wave, seemingly, of doubters regarding the reality of climate change. Does he need to consciously step back away from this debate to some degree?
I don't know. I mean, I think he was so important in making this debate understandable to Americans. What Al Gore did that was so important was he explained a rather complicated set of scientific principles that showed why melting of the polar ice cap actually affects snowstorms, ice storms, drought, all the other things that we associate with climate change. So he did that. I think he and his groups have to keep doing that, because it is easy to doubt. Let's face it, it's not something we deal with every day, right? So you have to keep at it, and it's a scientific argument. It's a lot tougher than the first generation.
Taking up the torch now are Senators Kerry, Graham, and Lieberman, pushing forward in the effort to draft Senate climate legislation, and it has been a very heavy lift so far. Can their bill move forward with a hybrid approach to pricing carbon? Is it possible to include a cap and trade with a cap and dividend, say?
I think that's the direction they're moving. The healthcare hiatus for climate change actually gave people a chance to step back and think about what the problems were with the original bill. And of course, one of the problems was the volatility that comes in a cap and trade market. It's no good for individual families trying to plan their expenditures. It's no good for businesses trying to plan their investments. And so everything we see happening now in Congress, from in the Kerry Lieberman bill and in the Cantwell bill, is an effort to deal with the problem of volatility. And I think that's a step definitely in the right direction.
Final question, Doctor. Where are we 3 months from now regarding that discussion and the political debate?
I'm hoping that 3 months from now we will settle on 2 principles around which to build a bill. And it may not happen this year because it's an election year, but I'm hoping that it'll definitely happen next year. And the 2 principles are very clear. You must give the money back to the consumer. In the middle of a great recession, which is what we're in the middle of, you just can't go raising the price of energy enough to make a difference without somehow making it up to the consumer in some other way.
And that's what the Cantwell-Collins Clear Act would do, a cap and dividend that returns revenue to consumers.
Absolutely. So that's definitely a step in the right direction. And I think the second thing that we see movement towards is we need to reduce the volatility in the price of carbon. The whole point of raising the price of carbon is to let businesses make sensible non-carbon investments. And that's just not going to happen if the price is too volatile. So to the extent that we can push out the volatility, which means on a scale of moving from a market that can be manipulated and played with to moving to a tax, it means moving closer to a tax. To the extent we can do that, I think we will have 2 very sound principles for a climate change bill for perhaps 2010 or probably 2011.
The President wants that price by 2012, so time is running out.
Yep.
Dr. Elaine Kamarck is with the U.S. Climate Task Force, a former policy advisor to Al Gore when he was running for president. Dr. Kamarck, thank you once again for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you as well for joining us. I'm Tyler Suiters. You're watching Clean Skies News.